Good evening, and the video you're about ready to watch is a video that Commissioner Wilson and I wanted to share with the public our views on voting by district and staggered terms.
Yeah, both of us agree that both voting by district and voting by staggered terms is not a good idea for Queen Anne's County, and not just not a good idea by a little, but not a good idea very clearly. So the following video will make our reasons clear.
I agree with my colleague Commissioner Wilson on voting by district. As I've always said, I've always been open to talking about voting for staggered terms, but the more and more I communicate with people about this, the more and more I am farther from the distance and on the same side as Commissioner Wilson on that.
Welcome to a new episode of Commissioner's Corner. This is a very special episode today. We have two commissioners here with us. We have Commissioner Stevie Wilson and Commissioner Robert Buckey. And this will be an informational session as they continue the discussion that Commissioner Buckey had with his special guest George O'Donnell the other day as it relates to commissioner districts and staggered terms. Gentlemen?
Sir.
Steve, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So kind of wanted to get your opinion on where do you stand, or where do you look at this so-called straw poll that's really the issue of the county right now seems to be staggered terms or voting by district.
Well, let's begin by talking about what straw polls mean and what district voting means, and we're going to assume that everybody knows that commissioners are now voted at large generally, and that this is an attempt to confine voting to the districts and also to change our normal four-year rotation into a once every year rotation or more. And I think both of those are exceptionally bad ideas. A lot of times in government, you wind up with issues that are equivocal and you can't decide which way to go with it. With this one, I have no doubt whatsoever the right thing to do and the best thing for the public is to stay with the system we've had for the last 200 years and not switch over into voting either staggered terms or confined to district. And here's why. In the terms of the voting on staggered terms, the argument for it is that it would provide some carryover of institutional knowledge, but given the state of some of our governments, carrying it over didn't necessarily improve it. That the bad side of this is manifold. Firstly, that would subject the county to an infinite progression of electioneering in the county. You'd be getting pamphlets all year, and the election would never stop. And normally in a four-year cycle, we have a number of debates, and perhaps 6 or 8 preceding the election. Now this process would either be confined to a couple for each election, or else you'd have endless debates with few people attending and very little gained in terms of exposing the candidates to each other and the public. And I think that's a bad idea. And if you go to district voting, that even makes the problem worse, because now special interest can concentrate money in any district in any year and swamp the district, because very often in off-year elections, when only a small number of people are voting for a single candidate, instead of the thousands that show up for a general election, you get a few hundred. And they're very often voters that are motivated by personal interest. Maybe they're in the hospitality field or something. But it would bias the elections and take away from the democratic process that we've had in the past. And it would make our elections much more susceptible to special interests, and I think that would be destructive to the good government of Queen Anne's County, and I mean that very intently. So is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. And elegant the way you put it out. I mean, to me, this really boils down to special interest, if you look at it, because if you take the district by voting per se, okay, a lot of the people are saying out there that this takes that interest group out of putting commissioners in office, and I agree that sometimes there's groups of individuals out there that vote in groups. Okay, somebody might like the YMCA, somebody doesn't like the YMCA, somebody wants tax increases, somebody doesn't want tax increases. So what this does is exactly what you said. I think personally is it dilutes the water, and you won't have as many people to come out. But the ones that are passionate, you're going to have 6 or 7 people running in a district, and with 300 or 400 votes that would win the election. You can easily buy an election that way. Easily, I agree.
It would unbalance a system
Absolutely.
that's worked very well in this county for many, many years. And right now, there is, I think, a rather limited number of people who, for very special interest, want this to go through. And it's hard to explain to the public because, in a sense, you can say this gives the public in each district more say. But in fact, what it's going to do is to cause everybody to have less say. Because, in fact, the group that's confined to right now is less than a third of the county, but 2/3 of the county are going to be deprived of a lot of their vote in this system. So I'm, as I've said before, strongly against it.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I concur with you. How about that's staggered, or that's voting by district? What about the staggered terms?
Well,
there's a talk out there about continuity.
Well, as I said a minute ago, that the continuity argument, I think, doesn't wash very well because truly the staff of the government provides the government with a lot of continuity. Everybody that works for the government isn't let go. And in fact, when you have somebody who's a particularly good commissioner, you can vote him in again, and you can create the continuity by your vote.
Right.
But what this does is to create an endless election cycle that's going to cause us to never not be barraged by advertising, and it's not a good idea.
I heard a lot during the last election, during the primary, that there were so many signs out that everywhere I looked, people hated all the signs everywhere. But I could not imagine what's going to happen if we go to a staggered election type. There'll be signs every single year.
Well,
there'll never be an off year of election.
No, every district is going to be papered with elect Buckey and Wilson signs.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's
I concur.
That's my opinion on it. So, thank you.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the voting by district. There's so many things that bothers me about voting by district. First of all, we're not a county that's set up like some of these larger counties that have councilmen, okay? So the larger counties that have council members, their executive is elected. Like Greg Todd to me was our continuity. I think us 4 new commissioners coming in, Jim Moran had a year's experience, but I don't feel we needed that continuity with other commissioners because we were all freshly elected. If it wasn't for Greg Todd and Margie, our staff upstairs, that prepared us tremendously to take our first office December 9th, that's what they're looking at. I don't think we actually need that. Personally, if you get the right people and you elect the right people, then I'm not so concerned about continuity. And do you agree with that?
I do, and not to overdo this point, but I spent 22 years before I got elected on the Emergency Service Board, on the Park and Recreation Board, on the Animal Board. 8 years on Park, 8 years on the Airport Board, Finance Board I was president of. So that there's a lot, you get continuity from people that have done volunteer work in the government for years leading into the experience of being in the government. And a lot of our folks have been involved with either charitable groups or groups that have informed them in a lot of ways about what's going on in the county and what's happening. Maybe they were in the political party groups, but whatever it was,
right.
Their knowledge preceded the election.
Correct. And the other thing I look at is when you vote by district, the other stuff I'm hearing out there is that, let's say we go by district, end up voting by district per se, and I want to run every time, but if Sudlersville, let's say District 1 wants to put a new high school or a gym or a rec center up there, hey, where's my encouragement to go up there and vote to do that? Nobody from District 1 is going to vote for me from District 3. All my votes come from District 3, so I'm going to do everything I can to protect District 3 and give them everything that they need. But we don't operate that way because we represent the entire county when we vote. Am I correct?
That is absolutely correct. What the commissioners of Queen Anne's County need is somebody that votes for the good of the entire county. What we don't want is commissioners that only vote to benefit their voter base, which is a narrow slice of the public. And that's why I say it would diminish the democratic principles of the county.
Correct. I concur. I want to mention that Steve Wilson and I had contacted other past commissioners, and they do not support this voting by district or staggered terms. Thank you.
I would say all the ones that I have spoken to, with the exception of one, have felt that the system we now have is the better system for Queen Anne's County, and that these are people who've had the experience of doing it, not people who are trying to get what we're currently doing changed.
Very good. That was
I
excellent.
just really thank you both for coming in and sharing, your expertise and your thoughts on this. And I would encourage the public to watch QAC TV on Atlantic Broadband Channel 7 or on the web. You can see it anytime on www.qac.org. We're doing a huge effort to reach out to the public through the Department of Community Affairs to make sure that you have access to information like this and other issues. So feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. You can reach us at welcome@qac.org. If you can send us an email or call us anytime at 410-758-4418.